Friends, I am so excited for this episode. You know, I get to interview people and talk about moments in their life where Jesus and video games intersected. And I think it's important we have those stories documented in a library somewhere. And that library is this. It's the database, the library of Satellite Stories podcast. And I think I'd be remiss not to throw my personal story into the library. So today, it's just going to be me. I'm not lonely. Don't worry. I'm not lonely. I just happen to be alone right now. And it's just me. So hey, sit back and enjoy some story time. I'm going to just kind of do this organically, maybe hiccup a couple times through it and just enjoy sharing this. So we're not going to get a whole lot into my family dynamics and different relational and personal things that may have happened throughout my life. It's pretty much going to be video games, Jesus, whatever happened after that. So here we go. Man, I remember a very young age starting to play video games, and at a very young age really falling in love with this idea that I had of who Jesus was. And, you know, there's pictures of me, you know, doing like the church plays and stuff. And I have memories of playing, you know, Tetris on the original NES. And one memory of the NES that I have was my dad had this, I think it was a monitor. And on all of the default, I don't know what the terms are. One of you nerdy people will be like, oh, it's this. One of you more nerdy than I am, be like, oh, it's this kind of screen. But it was a screen that like all the pixels, the default color was green instead of like black and white, right? So I think it was a computer monitor of some sort, and my dad hooked up my NES to it, and I remember playing Double Dragon, and everything was like green, and it was like, whoa, this is so cool. So that was a good time. And I have a lot of memories like that of like very early on getting into video games. You know, the first time I played Pokemon, I remember the person's house I was sitting at. I remember like the smell it was in their room, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Pokemon on a Game Boy, this is crazy. And just such good memories. And as I was growing up, I remember like my family wasn't big into board games. Like we went on like camping trips and stuff. We'd play Scrabble and such, and I'd play Monopoly with my older sister and just argue with her the whole time. So I grew to detest Monopoly pretty quickly. But most of the time, family game night for us was not board games. It was just this organic time of playing video games together. Almost every night, it was a lot. We played video games together a lot. My dad, before it was cool, had all of our computers LANed together, right? Like not all the computers had internet, but they were all connected via Ethernet. So, you know, people talk about having LAN parties, you know, back in the day when like it would have been when like first person shooters were just coming up, and when people were playing Age of Empires and StarCraft and CS, Counter-Strike. And I remember thinking like, oh, you guys were having LAN parties? That's cool. My house was just permanently a LAN party. And I kid you not, we'd play D2, Diablo 2. We would play Age of Empires, a lot of Empire Earth as time went on. And man, we just loved it. We loved it. It was so much fun. So my dad instilled in me the desire of playing video games at a very young age. And it was a good time. It was a good time. And when I was 12 years old, I remember very clearly going to a church camp. And this church camp was, you know, we were having pillow fights, and I was chasing girls and, you know, being all cringy middle schooler. And I remember very clearly it was that camp where I realized I want to do ministry for the rest of my life. And I really felt this desire to do whatever full-time ministry was. I didn't know what that meant, but I was just like, I know this. I know that I want to be about making disciples for the rest of my life, period. Whether I work a traditional vocation or not, I want to help in ministry forever. And I just began to explore what that meant as I grew up, and made a lot of dorky mistakes as a teenager. But I'd mostly grown up going to a Christian school. And about the time I switched to public school is where the whole video games and Jesus thing really intersected, and it got fun. And I'll try my best to explain it how like the best that I remember it. and maybe it's theatrical. I don't know. Jesus told parables, and I feel like they were pretty theatrical. Let me just say, like, this is a true story. I probably got some details wrong because it was 20 years ago. Okay, 20 years ago. But I switched from a private Christian school to public school, and I remember pretty clearly on if not the first day, it was the second day of school, I saw a fight. And it was between two girls, and one of them got her eye all messed up, like it's like bulging out kind of, and then her shoulders dislocated. She clearly lost. But I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking, man, I might see fights in public schools. I'd seen some fights in private schools. I'd maybe even been in a fight in private school. But I was thinking, as I go to public school, like, man, it's gonna be so cool. I'm gonna see fights, And I'm like 15 years old, show up at school, see this fight, and I just remember, like, there's this circle of people, like it's half circle. And the lockers, and this girl smashing her face in a locker. It feels like I'm in a movie, and I just go in the middle. I grab my books out of my locker and I walk away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. And I remember thinking, like, wow, it's actually really, really sad. I was not excited that I had just witnessed a fight. I was like, with my friends, like, yeah, that was cool, man. Did you see her eye? Like, her arm was just dangling there. But like, man, that was sad. And I remember thinking inwardly, like, this sucks. This world is dark. This is painful. And I think switching to public schools at the time, and for me, was probably one of the most like helpful things that I did in my personal walk with Christ. And as I started getting engaged in public school, I actually stopped playing traditional sports on teams. I had played sports my whole life: baseball, basketball, a little bit of basketball. Played a lot of baseball growing up, and then a good amount of football in middle school and high school. And I just kind of stopped, and I got even more into video games. And I remember playing Halo 2 the day that it launched on Xbox Live. The first map I played was Midship, and I remember just destroying people. And my dad, we were really proud of ourselves. He ran Ethernet through the wall, drilled a hole in the wall, made sure I had good internet. And this was on the original Xbox. And I remember sitting on this futon. My dad's like, "Oh, you're pretty good at this game." I'm like, I am, I guess. And then he left, and I just started taking Halo real serious, Halo 2. And it started to become known that I took Halo serious, that I played Halo, and people knew I was the Christian kid, and I got invited to this party. And at this party, I knew it was probably going to have some like public school things. I knew there was maybe going to be some drugs, some weed. I knew there was going to be some alcohol, maybe girls. I didn't know is going to be like girls at this party. But I remember asking my parents, "Hey, can I go?" And they're like, "Why do you want to go to this party?" I'm like, "Well, because they're going to have a Halo tournament." And my dad's like, "Dude, what?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to show up at this party, and I just want to play Halo." And I had like, my little Razor flip phone. They're like, "All right, well, you call us and you come home if you get tempted at all." And I'm like, okay. And I'm pretty sure like the goal of everyone else was like, let's like destroy this little Christian kid at video games, and then let's get him drunk for his first time. Like I didn't know what to expect. I'm just like terrified. I'm going in like I'm like this is a movie scene, And I remember driving into this property, and there's this house on the hill, and then a garage down at the bottom. And this garage, the lights were on, music was playing. And sure enough, it looked like a bar in there. I mean, like, there's like a pool table, the Bud Light sign, and I don't know, like, again, maybe I'm like exaggerating this, but no, I remember very clearly, like, this is not an environment which I've been before. And I get through the door. Sure enough, there's booze. There's people smoking weed outside. I'm pretty sure, maybe I didn't know the difference between weed and cigarettes at the time, but people are smoking, people are drinking. And I see an Xbox, and I see like 4 or 5 of them, and I just beeline it to the couch, pick up a controller, and I'm just like, why am I here? And I start playing Halo. And I remember, man, I just cooked everybody. I tore it up. It was probably one of the best nights of Halo I had. And I was like, yeah, okay, I did it. This is great. And there was another guy there who was really good, and he and I ended up becoming friends. And it became known now that I was good at Halo, and to the point where the weightlifting coach had heard about it, and they later started calling me Halo. That was my nickname from our weightlifting coach in high school. And anyway, I ended up getting home like, I don't know, 4 a.m., something like that, and my mom like, "Hey, you just now getting home? Did you drink? Are you high? What's wrong?" And I'm kind of like down. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm sad. And she's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I don't know. I'll tell you tomorrow." And So I go to sleep, and I wake up the next day, and I talk to my parents. It's probably noon at this point. It's probably like 2 p.m. or something. I don't know. My parents are like, well, how was it? And I'm like, my heart breaks, Mom and Dad. Like, what's going on? Why is your heart broken? I said, how am I going to be a light in a dark place if I don't go into any dark places? I said, that was dark. Like, I think it's a matter of time before they influence me. Now, for a lot of people, and probably people my age at the time, they're like, what does it matter? You went to this party. But for me, like, again, I had started experiencing this real encounter with Jesus where, like, I wasn't going to judge people that were making different decisions than I was. And I probably did, regrettably at the time, judge a little bit. But I was like, I just don't want to do that. I want to have self-control. I want to surrender my life to Jesus. And it's a matter of time before they start influencing me. So my mom and dad, they say, why don't you start having the Halo parties here? I'm like, yeah, hey, you guys want to come to the Christian kid's house, play some Halo and drink some soda pop? And my parents were like, yeah, try it. So we did. And I would say just about every major party holiday from then on, 4th of July, New Year's Eve, I don't know, St. Patty's Day. Every time there was a reason to gather people and play Halo, we had filled the house one time, I think, with like 12 Xboxes, like over 50 people, and like 2.5 or 3 like full lobbies of people playing Halo together. And there could be 16 players in a lobby. And I'm just like, dude, this is nuts. So our house, just like, this was before social media days. So I don't think there are any pictures out there of these, but our house was just like strung with Ethernet cables and Xboxes and a whole lot of soda. And, there were rules, nobody's having sex in the bathroom. No alcohol. And if you want to smoke, do it across the street. So, the cops don't associate you with my parents' house because you're underage. And, man, it was a good time. And what I realized was like, wow, I just have fun doing that. There's a lot of community. Like, I like playing online, but something about like playing shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people. Like, if you had LAN parties growing up, you know what I'm talking about. And, sorry, you're going to hear my dogs. I guess I'm not alone. My dogs are here today. But man, I remember so clearly just thinking like, video games, this is what I want to do with my life. And I started competing with game battles. I started competing Halo online. I would get into lobbies with people that were professionals at the time, with people that were playing at a very high level. And I took it real serious. And I had to decide a little later on in high school, like, is this something that I wanted to pursue a career in? Was video games. It was Halo 2 days, right? I'm like, dude, that's weird. It started moving into Halo 3 days, and me and my buddy, we would play in duos. And I remember one time my brother and I got put against 2 professionals, 2 brothers, and that was pretty cool. We played against them, and almost won. So there were some fun moments of playing these competitive games. And I just remember at one point just going like, no, I can't do video games as a career. Like, I'm gonna put them down. I'm gonna shelve them. I'm not gonna play video games. So I got one more kind of funny story as I go into college, and I'm taking the competitive side of gaming less serious, but I'm taking the ministry life pretty serious. And I'll tell you this, just disclaimer, okay? I was not a great college student. Any of my friends that went to school with me, they know this. I was passionate about Jesus. I was passionate about ministry. I was about the Lord's work. But I'm just not good in the traditional school format. Like, I get tired. I get like just lethargic. I'm like, dude, this format, like, for me personally, I'm like, I can't learn anything here. What's going on? And maybe it was like discipline. Maybe it was a lack of paying attention. Part of me is like, is it just the way I'm wired? But I remember like times where I'd fall asleep in class, and I'm like, why is this happening? I'm paying so much to go to Bible college. I'm falling asleep in class. And I remember on the weekends, we used to play this game Empire Earth, and we would all play on our laptops, and we would connect over the Wi-Fi, and we would just go for hours. I mean, like 12-hour sessions on Saturdays of playing Empire Earth. We're college students. We work hard all week, and we party on Saturday. It's the only day we got off because Sunday we all help in different churches. So Saturday was just Empire Earth for hours. And we had this like chat system that we used. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was just like some messenger or something. But we're sitting in speech class, and it's set up like auditorium style. And I had a buddy who had a British accent, and he sends this message to all of us while we're in speech class, and it says Empire Earth, Empire Earth, and a question mark, and we're all like, in class. And we kind of like look at each other, looking around. There's like maybe, I don't know, maybe 100 people in class. Maybe not, but 70 people, I don't know. And we all like one by one, we open it up and we start playing Empire Earth together in class. And I'm not, this is just part of my story, okay? Like, hate me or not, this is part of my story. And we start playing Empire Earth. And we're playing against each other, and like I'm in the back, and one by one, they kind of like start putting it away a little bit, and we're all playing it. Like you can see it on all our screens and whatever. As you look down the auditorium, so you can see like random people with Empire Earth in their games. And what we're doing is we're listening to other people's speeches and scoring them, right? So I'm like, we can play a game while we do this. My friend instigated this anyway. We're good. And all of a sudden, like I hear this door behind me open, and I see this person that I'd never seen before, like walk down, whisper in the professor's ear, and then walk back. And I just see the professor like look up at us and just stare at us. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I wait a little bit. And as she starts walking up, I look behind me, and in this classroom, the back, it's okay, I wasn't thinking, right? It's a classroom that is for touring the school. So the back of the classroom was just this glass window, and people could come and watch our classes. And there were like a whole bunch of seniors in high school touring the school at the time. And me and like 4 of my buddies are just playing Empire Earth. And I'm like, oh no. And they managed to put it away in time to not get caught. But me, of course me, I got caught. And I share this memory to just say, I didn't always have the healthiest relationship with video games. And I probably still don't, but I remember even at that time going like, man, what role do video games have in my life? Like I'm so passionate about them. They create so much community, so many fun stories, but I'm like, Lord, what am I doing with this video game crap? And I continue to move on to adulthood and overplay video games, make some poor choices, burn some relational bridges through playing a lot of video games, trying to figure out like, what does my relationship with them look like? And I would say my relationship with video games was not any worse than other people's relationship with other hobbies, but video games were just this relatively new thing. They would keep us in the house, keep us in the basement. There wasn't a way to play them in community. And if the people that I cared about didn't play video games, I didn't really spend time with the people I cared about. So I probably hurt a lot of people in my relationship with video games. But I remember so clearly after years of doing youth ministry and worship ministry and moving around to a few different locations, and finally getting an opportunity to start my first full-time job in youth ministry. I remember driving from Idaho to Oregon to take that position. And this was my prayer. My friends have heard me say this a lot, but as I was driving, I said, Lord, I will do and be for these young people whatever it is they need. If they need a chaplain on their football team, I got it. If they need an assistant coach on the basketball team, I got it. If they need an umpire for baseball, I'll figure it out. Please, Lord, do not let them be car mechanics, because I do not want to work on cars. But I'll pick up a wrench, I'll grease up my elbows, and I will work on cars if that's what these kids need. So I'm driving to Kaiser, Oregon to take my first full-time job as a youth pastor. I'd done it part-time for years in various ways. I'm like, here it goes. I show up, and on the first Sunday, there's a bunch of kids wearing like Halo shirts and video game shirts and Star Wars shirts, and they're arguing over which Star Wars movie is the best. Now, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I'm just going like, these are my people. These are my people. And man, there was like 8 kids in the youth group at the time. And I just remember so clearly the Lord saying like, Jamie, man, video games, bro. Play video games with these kids. Just do it. If there's one thing you've learned how to do over the years, is play you some video games. It's time to put that to practice. So we started playing video games, and from there, our youth ministry was called Satellite Youth Ministry. And we decided to do a gaming night one night. and it was Satellite Gaming Night. And if you heard the podcast, the episode from David, from here is where you really get to understand the whole satellite gaming story. I would encourage you, that was episode 1, to go give that a listen. There are a few things that transpired from here that are maybe more from my perspective than the satellite gaming perspective, but this is where I had to personally start making decisions like, am I going to play video games for myself? Am I going to play games like League of Legends and pursue a high rank in solo queue? Am I going to pursue games like Halo and pursue to be Onyx every season? You know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to spend my time? And, you know, we made some decisions as a family, my wife and I did, to, hey, let's try live streaming. And man, live streaming was good. Man, I tell you, my wife is an entertaining human. People love watching my wife play some horror games. Oh my goodness. Some of the clips that are still out there, I see them and I just die. I'm like, why did we ever stop that? And the reason we stopped live streaming is because for us personally, we started looking at the impact that we were having locally. We hosted youth group out of our house, and our house was not a large house, but we got to the point where we could pack 45 people in our home for worship, for hearing of the word, for a message, and for video games. And man, we had kids in our backyard all through the summer playing 9 Square, playing different games. And man, those times were so good. But I remember us being prayerful regularly about like, Lord, what is Jamie's relationship with video games? What is Jessica's relationship with this nerdy guy who likes to play video games? And guys, it wasn't always pretty. A lot of times it was like, Jamie, you're playing too many video games. Jamie, if you really want satellite gaming to become something more than just a side project while you're a youth pastor, like you've got to stop playing so many video games. Jamie, if you want your wife to be happy, you've got to stop playing so many video games. And it was hard. It was hard. And I would say, fast forwarding to now, my relationship with video games is a lot healthier. I've got to make some very purposeful decisions about how I engage with video games. I take a 21-day break from video games at the beginning of every year. I try to be very careful about pursuing like prestige in video games, like ranks and things of that nature now. There are just certain boundaries and guidelines that I've set up. Because although I use video games as a tool for ministry, I could also use them as a tool for the flesh, as a tool for myself. I don't mind using them as a tool for leisure. I don't mind using them as a tool for fun. But man, I will say there were a lot of times where I used video games as a tool for the flesh. And even fast forwarding to just a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine, Chris Skaggs, who, man, I hope to have him on here at some point. He and I were at the Mount Angel Abbey, and we got to spend some time with some monks. And while we were walking around with the monks, we asked one of them, like, hey, is it okay for a monk to play video games? He said, oh, absolutely. As long as it is done with purpose. I'm like, huh. And he said, what does it look like to play video games with purpose? And I always have an answer for that, but now I'm talking to a monk who, like, every step he takes, this dude is like thinking about it. It's got to be on purpose. And I'm like, wow, I've given this answer 1,000 times, but how do I give that answer to a monk? And being able to talk with him and to really discuss, like, what does it look like to play video games with purpose and on purpose? Man, it's that every time I push that power button, every time I push that start button, every time I push that lock-in button, that next game button, every time I push that button, that I'm prayerful of, like, Lord, how can you utilize this to bring me closer to you? And boy, that brought up a lot of conviction, because not every time in my life that I pushed that button to play another game, probably more often it didn't bring me closer to Jesus. And I don't share this again, like it's like, oh, well, you run this video game industry, you should have it all figured out. No, I do not. No, I do not. But I'll share one final story. This is another recent one. Just of where I really feel like my story is my entire life is video games and Jesus intertwining. And I think it's because I have this desire that, Lord, anything that I have a passion for, may I use that as a tool to reflect your love. So if I was passionate about like crocheting, I've said this before, like we'd have satellite crocheting. Like if the students in the youth group were into crocheting, it would be satellite crocheting. Again, listen to that first episode with David if you haven't listened to it yet. But man, my whole life, it's like a daily thing for me where video games and Jesus intersect on purpose. And just recently, a buddy of mine who leads the prayer team at Satellite Gaming, he invited me to go to PDX LAN with him. PDX LAN is dope, like it's crazy cool. A couple hundred people there, 160 people, I don't know. Everyone's bringing their gaming PCs. Some people got crazy setups where they decorate it all. They have a contest, and you're just there, just playing video games with a bunch of people that love video games. And as I'm getting ready to go, my wife says, like, is this going to be good for you? And I was like, I don't know. I got a hold of a few of my friends and I said, hey, hold me accountable because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. If I go and I play video games all weekend, that's fine. Like, this is cool. I've like never done anything like this. I mean, at least in my college days, my high school days, I used to play video games 10 hours a day. Not proud of that. I think it was okay at times, but like I spent so much time on video games, man. I spent so much time. So now as an adult with 2 kids and a wife, like I'm going to play video games all weekend. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, but let's do it. It's going to be fun. And it was a great time. It was great. It was perfect. But I told my buddies going into it, like, hey, I'm going to need some accountability on the back end because I'm afraid what's going to happen is I'm going to play some competitive games while I'm there. I'm going to take gaming all serious. I'm going to come home and I'm going to want to game like I'm a bachelor again. I just can't do that. To be honest, this was within the last couple months. I go to PDX LAN. I come home. Every night I'm playing League of Legends again. Kids are asleep. Wife's in bed. She'd probably fall asleep early anyway. But I'm in here playing League of Legends. I'm in here just sweating. And that alone is not bad. But this is what I love. I started thinking like, Jess, like I have no self-control. Why can't I not? Why do I do this? And then I stopped playing. And what I realized was like, wait a second. The fact that I had that awareness to see that, to catch that, to evaluate, is this good for me in my current season of life? And to go, no, it's not. I'm pulling away from it. That is, in a way, self-control, like it went on for a couple of days and then I reevaluated, reassessed, and I pulled back. So I share this to say a few things. I share all of these things to say a few things. Let me revisit my story with these points. One, I've not always had the healthiest relationship with video games, and I hope the Lord is still refining me in that way. And thank you, Jess, and people in my life for the grace that you've given me when I have not stewarded that well. 2, I love video games, but more than I love video games, I really love Jesus. I love Jesus, and I believe that if we are purposeful about how we play video games, we can have a satellite story every single time we push the play button. Every single time we push the lock-in button. I think we can. And 3, and this is the last thing that I will say. I did not know, and if you would have told me that this is what I'd be doing with my life 10 years ago, especially 20 years ago when I went into that party, when I played Halo in that garage, if you would have told me, like, Jamie, this is preparing for you to be a minister of the gospel using this medium as a tool. If you would have told me that, I would have said, you're crazy. I would have said, no way. And if you would have told me that, I probably would have avoided it. I don't know. It blows my mind because I wouldn't have believed it. I would have avoided it because I'm like, there's no way that can actually be true. And here I am doing that. And I just absolutely love it. I don't know where each of you are in your relationship with Christ. I don't know where each of you are in your relationship with your number one hobby. I might be watching sports and you might be watching too much. Stop. I love me some NBA right now, okay? Come on, Anthony Edwards. Put down the Nuggets, right? I don't know much about probably a few people watching this podcast. I probably know a lot of people that are going to give it a listen, but man, know this, the Lord can use your love for anything as a tool for showing others your love for him. And I think if we surrender those things to him, we may not always have them perfect. We may not have them figured out. Oof. But man, we surrender our desires to Jesus, it can do some crazy stuff. Friends, I love you all so much. I'm glad that you take the time to listen to this. I hope you found some joy in it. I hope that it blessed you. I can't wait to hear more stories and to share more stories with you. I can't wait to get my wife on here. You get to hear the voice of a woman who is a motherly figure to a lot of young gamers. She gets to knock us all straight when we get a little off the path, and you're gonna get to hear from, I don't know, maybe some of my family, but I really hope we get to hear from some of you. If you have a satellite story, a moment in your life where, man, Jesus and video games intersect, and it's just so obvious that he is to be glorified through that, would you please reach out? Jamie at satellitegaming.net. There's other ways you can find it. That's just Jamie at satellitegaming.net. Send me your story. Let's talk. Let's get you on here. I love you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful week. One more thing. Satellite Stories will be streaming on the Glue Network. That's GLU. Glue is a streaming platform available on Roku and smart TVs, as well as their Android and iPhone apps. Glue exists to unlock the inspirational value of faith-centric programming, partnering with Christian content creators like Love Thy Nerd and Satellite Stories. If you download the Glue Network app today and search for Love Thy Nerd, you'll find us right there. Thanks for joining us as we grow the library of Satellite Stories. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, Jesus loves you, nerds.